Alabama beat Georgia. Georgia's just a much better team. That was Paul Finebaum talking about the Dogs and Tide, and it's been Meltdown Monday for Alabama here as we get ready for Thanksgiving. I think everybody thinks Alabama's out of the college football playoff. We'll see. That's probably, I think, at this stage with the law, a loss to Vanderbilt. I don't think there's any shame in losing to Tennessee or at Tennessee, but the loss to Vanderbilt's one thing, but the loss to Oklahoma, that was a really bad loss for the Tide. And, we'll see if Georgia can avoid something like that this weekend against the Jackets when they host them this Friday night at 7:30. It's hard for me to get used to saying that. I like it. I think I like it at least. But this is going to be a great opportunity for Georgia to wrap up their season going 10-2, one of the most challenging schedules. It's the most challenging schedule I can recall that Georgia's played in its time. Certainly Kirby's most difficult schedule at Alabama, at Texas, at Ole Miss, Jacksonville, Clemson. It's a lot. You still had Auburn. You still had, you still got the Jackets. I mean, there's been quite a challenging schedule. But when you think about where Alabama's at right now, I mean, all three losses that they ate were on the road. All three of them. Kirby's not the only person that talks about how difficult it is playing on the road in the SEC. Somebody in the car talks about that all the time too. But Alabama really failed this season. And that all you gotta do is check Bama Talk or Bama Twitter or watch Paul's show and see people just completely jumping off roofs. I don't know what to make of it. I mean, they were fortunate to beat Georgia. A, they were fortunate to beat South Carolina. B, more fortunate probably to beat Georgia than Carolina. They, both games though ended really tight at the end, and let's say they beat Vanderbilt but lose to Carolina or Georgia, they're probably in the same position. I don't know. Maybe they'd be in a better position to get to the playoff. But if you're Georgia, Alabama's envious of your position right now. I mean, you're talking about a 12-team playoff, and Alabama missed it like that. I wrote about this earlier this week. Earlier this month, if Georgia missed the playoff, it'd be failure. I mean, I don't know how it's not failure for Alabama. To some degree, Mississippi. I hope that Tennessee does not miss the playoff. I do not think they will. Assuming they beat Vanderbilt, assuming Georgia beats Tech, I think both those teams are in no matter what happens in the SEC championship game. If Texas beats A&M, they're definitely in. I mean, they'd be worst case scenario 11-2. But it could be that we only see 3 SECs because I do not think, and I'll have a reaction tomorrow night, but I do not at all think that the College Football Playoff Committee is going to give the SEC an extra team because Alabama is a better brand name than SMU or Miami. If those two teams, if one of them is 11-1 and the other one's 11-2, they're probably both getting in. I mean, honestly, if you're Georgia, you'd probably rather play those two. Alabama's so up and down this season. One commenter, one poster, one member over at Dawg Post. You can try Dawg Post today for $1. Check it out. $1 gets you all of this insider information that we provide, our insights, and those of us have been actually doing this not from our mom's basement for the last 25 years. One person commented, Alabama has been a lot like Georgia, but I think it's actually been more extreme for Alabama. Just the non-functioning, they were completely not. Georgia's not looked that bad against losing teams, which is what Oklahoma is, if not Vanderbilt too. I don't know what Vanderbilt's record. I think they might be 6-5. They might be 5-6. I'm not sure. I think they have a winning record, but a lot of people have really beaten Vanderbilt pretty good, frankly. Texas kind of goofed around with them. I think Georgia might be the best team in the league, and they just were really given a very challenging schedule. I mean, if they don't play at Ole Miss, they're probably 11-1. If they don't play at Alabama, they're probably 11-1. I mean, who have they saved themselves against? Kentucky? That won't be the last time they saved themselves at Commonwealth. So I don't know if you can really, I don't know. But LSU, this has not been a great year for the brand names in the SEC. LSU just a horrific year. Alabama, really bad year. Auburn's a brand name. Florida, Florida's turned it around, but it's not been a good season. But then you just, you look at what's in front of Georgia on Friday, and Georgia Tech's. I know this is actually completely not factual. This is inaccurate, what I'm about to say. Friday is a must-win game for Georgia. Okay, so that's not a fact. That is inaccurate. Okay, that is actually completely wrong. And I know we live in a post-fact world, but I just want to say that, Clemson, South Carolina, Georgia Tech, those games don't seem like what they are, which is, in the case of Clemson, they really want to get to that 10th win if they can, for anything strange that could happen. Indiana loses, stuff like that, where whoa, what just happened? Like a bomb just went off. That's what it's like for Georgia against Tech. They're going to really need to play well, physical. Kirby talked about the physicality of this game. Look, man, Brent Key's done just a great job at Tech, and I'm not just saying that. I never said that about Jeff Collins. People know that have been watching me for a long time. I never said that about Jeff Collins, because Jeff Collins didn't do a good job at Tech. This guy's doing a pretty good job. They're not where they need to be for what he wants, but he's doing a good job. Let me point this out too. Our buddies at Red Zone, they'll be open at regular hours on Black Friday for the Tech game, okay? So you're going to get your turkey on. They got a lot of really neat stuff. A really nice framed blackout photo from the Tennessee game. Really cool looking Christmas stuff on the natty list, stuff like that. And you can pick all that up in red or black or white or whatever. You can pick all that up at Red Zone on Clayton Street downtown. Go say hello to Scott and Mindy. It's been they've got stuff you can't find elsewhere, and it's easy to go there, to be honest with you. I just coming back from New York, and it's so complicated to get around sometimes up there. Downtown Athens is not really that way. If you want a real challenge, you'd go to some of the other locations that sell things. It's not worth the trouble, and locally owned, and th're great supporters of Dawg Post. So check them out on Friday. But it's going to be, a critical moment and game for Georgia. They're going to have to be physical. And, with the way that Tech has played. Now, I talked with one insider on Sunday about Tech. And, there is a lot of curiosity about Haynes King's situation. Can he physically throw the ball? Functionally, not throw it, but functionally throw it. He had a hard time doing that against NC State, but Tech, this is going to be the first opportunity in a long time, in my view, probably since 2010, for Georgia's crowd to really affect this game. In 12, Tech had no shot in that game. They were going to get bulldozed. Paul Johnson said after that game that was one of the best Georgia's teams he'd seen in a while. They won in 14. That was a sleepy noon game. They won in 16. That was a sleepy noon game. 18, again, I believe it was at noon. Total blowout. 20 didn't exist. And then 22 was an early game, I believe at noon. It got off to a slow start for Georgia too. This is a 4-quarter game. Both these teams are physical. Georgia's the better team. That's not in doubt here, okay? But we've seen all season that Georgia has, not always played up to its ability. And everybody that they play, it seems, brings the physicality in a way that, it's a challenging thing. So Tech has been good, not great. Good, not great. They're having to juggle two quarterbacks. The backup quarterback is pretty good too now, but he does make a lot of kind of, I wouldn't say wild, but he does some stuff and you're like, I wouldn't do that. But that's what freshmen do. So, this is a game Georgia, listen, this is a game Georgia can lose, but there's not a real high possibility of that happening. They're going to have to, if Georgia plays the way that they are capable of, really Tech will have a hard time. I think what people have a misconception about with this game particularly is they think Georgia's just supposed to mow Tech down. That's not how this game works. And anybody who has been around the block for a while knows that, Tech is a more formidable team than they are given credit for by Georgia folks. And I can assure you, because of Kirby's understanding of the way that Brent Key has worked and done it, he's done a really good job. I mean, it's not just, they got Buster over there now. No, it's not. That's like overdone. Brent Key has established a particular mindset there of we're going to be physical and we're going to fight. I mean, the good news for Tech is, like, the win over Florida State. Well, that didn't look like it did, but that was a great start to the season. And then, the troubling part are, they really got dominated by Notre Dame. The loss at Syracuse I did not think that was going to happen. They didn't play well against Louisville, but they were kind of not the better team. But they hung in. They did hang in there. And then, like, the most disturbing thing for me was the loss at Virginia Tech. I didn't understand that. Like, that was just a straight up Tech egg laying. And that almost happened against NC State. NC State's not a good team. And I thought so far this is played out kind of the way I suspected it, which is that Tech plays not well against NC State and then they play well against Georgia. We'll see. That scramble stuff that Tech was doing with their quarterback against NC State, and NC State dropping 8 and seemingly not turning around on defense, like, Georgia's not going to make that mistake the whole time. So, and the other thing, dare I say, it does look like Georgia's offense is starting to really get going, and that would matter a lot in this case. I mean, this is a Georgia offense that, I would not be surprised if they put up some points. This is a Tech team that's allowing over 20, but I think 24-ish, 23-ish, somewhere in that place. It's not a lot, but, Notre Dame scored 31 on them. I don't think it's out of the question for Georgia to score, 35 plus on Tech. And I just, that's going to be hard for the Jackets to get past. Look, that you struggle against Tech or that it's a competition doesn't mean this is not a good Georgia team and it doesn't elevate Tech. You have to win. If you don't win, you go the way of Ole Miss. And what I mean by that is, one game in a regular season does not make the season. Now the season starts, though. Whether Georgia gets A&M or Texas, I will probably pick Georgia to win that game straight up. Either way, I'd be curious to see the lines. I'd be curious to see how Texas A&M beats Texas. But Texas doesn't look super healthy necessarily either. And the Texas matchup, if they were playing Georgia, it's maybe not the greatest matchup on earth for Texas. But let's just see. But for Tech, you're going to Athens. That's where they've had success. But they've not had a lot of success in Athens. Like, I don't want to overdo it. Sometimes I kind of overdo it with Tech and Athens thing. They've only won 3 times in Athens this century. That's the only 3 games they've won, though. So there's that. But, they've, in 13, they could have won against Georgia. In 09, they could have won against Georgia. In 15, these are all in Atlanta. They could have won in 15. They could have won in, 11, I guess. But maybe not. That was a tight. Georgia was only like a 2-point favorite in that game. They won that game, I think, 31-17. They had no running backs. They were in real trouble that day. But there's been times when Tech has had opportunities, 05, but they've not, 05, 09, 11, 13 for sure went to overtime. They just haven't won in Atlanta, that's all. In Athens, these games are more competitive than people want to give it credit for. This is not 1990s Clemson, South Carolina, where they both seemingly are even, and then Clemson wins like by 100, like every other year. Like, that's not what this is. This is a competitive game. One team is a national brand, the other one is a regional. They're rivals, and people are not thinking. People are grading Georgia on a curve here, and I think the curve to me is, do you win or not? Because they win almost certainly. I would find it hard to believe, actually. I think a win actually does lock you into the playoff, and that's it. Because you'd be 10-2. A loss in the SEC championship game, they're not going to drop you out of the playoff. You may have to travel to Penn State, but that wouldn't be the end of the world either. But you want to win these next 2 games to set yourself up to only play 3 games, and that's it. We'll see if ETN is healthy. We'll see if Bell is going to play. I mean, like, there are some guys that, Georgia's got to get healthy still, and they're not. I mean, like, Christian Miller doesn't look like he's going to play against Tech, so they got to kind of get. They played their kind of gimme game against UMass. They did not play well defensively. They did offensively, and it's but I thought watching the Alabama folks just fall apart is probably the most predictable thing you could imagine. This was going to be a transitional year for Alabama. I don't know what will happen with Kalen DeBoer, but I think just because he's struggling this year doesn't mean he'll struggle for good. I mean, you're talking about an Alabama program that's got a lot going for it, and a guy who's coming in here and it's new. I mean, it wasn't great for Kirby when he started. He was 8-5. And he took over a program pretty good. He didn't take a program over as well as what Nick left DeBoer. But Kirby didn't have Jalen Milroe as quarterback. There were some things that he had to get right. But that was not an easy season. They got blown out by Ole Miss. They lost to Vanderbilt on the last play of the game. They lost to Tech on the last play of the game. They lost to Tennessee on the last play of the game. They got a routine loss against Florida. They had to save themselves against Missouri. I mean, the win against South Carolina that game, that was an ugly. That's the last time that's the last time they played a regular season game not on a Saturday. It was that Sunday after Hurricane Matthew, I think. So these first seasons you just don't know, but Alabama folks have decided that they are only about championships and that's it. Well, I'll just say this, and I don't mean this snarky at all. Some of y'all are forgetting the pre-Nick Saban times. And your program is not predicated only on successful times. It's predicated on other things too. So how low this goes is something else that you have to watch at Alabama. But one win does not make a season. The 2 teams Georgia lost to probably are going to be left out of the playoff, and Georgia's probably not. We'll see. Probably is a big word, but that's what it looks like right now. Thanks for watching.